So, 2020, yeah, that was an interesting year. Hey everybody, I'm Ken with Mid-Level Media, and I'm here today to deliver to you my top 10 films of 2020. That's right, everybody. I've watched all the films that I feel like I need to watch in order to make this list. And 2020 was a very different kind of a year. As everybody knows, the whole world knows this. I don't have to say it. But everything went down like right at the beginning of March. We got a couple of movies in theaters at the beginning of the March, and then everything went to hell right after that, and we didn't have a whole lot of theatrically released films. Of course, stuff came back in August. So for the majority of 2020, we really had to rely on these streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, the whole straight to home video thing where they're charging you $20 to watch a movie at home. It was all in front, it was all sitting on your couch watching these movies on the TV, which is not the ideal way for me to watch a movie. I enjoy that theatrical experience. I feel like I get more out of it. So 2020 was an interesting year, but even with all the issues and the problems and the lack of movies in the theaters, I still managed to watch 79 films that were released in 2020. And I take these lists very seriously, like I said, so I will go a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks usually into January, so I make sure that I see everything that I want, because this always ends up happening. I make my list, and then I watch a movie that's like, damn, that would have been in my top 5 if I would have just waited. And I take these lists very seriously. So once I make the list, it's done. I'm not gonna redo it when I see a movie that I think deserves to be in it. And these are like what I consider to be like time capsules. In 6 months, I may feel differently. In a year, I may feel differently. But this is how I feel right at this moment. These are the 10 best films that I feel right now making this list were the best films of 2020. You may not agree with me on all these picks, but that's kind of the beauty of these top 10 lists. You're just kind of getting a snapshot look into my taste, my opinion, and what I think is the top 10 best films of 2020. So before we get into some honorable mentions, I want to go ahead and ask you guys, if this is your first time discovering me on YouTube, please just hit that subscribe button, become a subscriber of the Mid-Level Media channel. I do all kinds of great, amazing content on this channel centered around the world of movies and physical media. I do a lot of Blu-ray 4K content. I do a show every single week where I spotlight all the new releases that are coming out that week. I go out and do Blu-ray hunts in stores. I do top 10 lists like this. I did my top 10 best January horror films last week. I do reviews, mostly disc reviews, but I also do movie reviews as well. A lot of the movies that I'm going to be covering today on my top 10 list, and even some honorable mentions, I actually have video reviews for on this channel if you want to go back in my reviews playlist and check those out. So also guys, be sure to like this video. You don't understand just how much a little like can help this video out and help it reach more people on the YouTube platform. So if you can, just hit that like button for me. I would really appreciate it. And also, like I said, comment down below your top 10, your top 15, your top 5, whatever. Did you only see 3 new films in 2020? Leave those down below. Let me know what your favorites were. So let's go ahead and get into these honorable mentions, guys. Like I said, I saw 79 films in 2020. I saw a lot of stuff in 2020. I saw a lot of stuff that in my opinion was mediocre, but I saw some stuff that was actually pretty decent, pretty good, but not good enough to make it into my top 10 list. So a couple of ones that I want to highlight right off the bat is Birds of Prey. I actually really enjoyed that DC film. I enjoyed it quite a bit more than another film that will not be anywhere near my top 10 of 2020, and that's Wonder Woman. So as far as like DC movies, I think that Birds of Prey was by far the best of 2020. Margot Robbie was excellent in this role, and I really enjoyed that film. Also, The Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie film. I'm not as familiar with Guy Ritchie's filmography as I probably need to be. I haven't seen Snatch. I haven't seen Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I've seen Aladdin. I've seen the Sherlock Holmes films. I've seen a lot of his like later films, but not the ones that kind of brought him into prominence as a director. So from my understanding, this is a real throwback to those old Guy Ritchie films, and I really enjoyed The Gentleman. Thought it had a lot of great performances by Matthew McConaughey, by Colin Farrell. A lot of good stuff in that movie that I really enjoyed. Also, Onward, I thought was a really good Pixar film. Not great, but good Pixar film with an incredibly emotional ending that if I'm being honest, I teared up at. It's also Palm Springs, that Hulu original film starring Andy Samberg, Christina Miliato, I think is her last name. I'm probably saying that wrong, but that was a really fun kind of time loop, kind of Happy Death Day, Groundhog Day-esque romantic comedy that I enjoyed, but it wasn't good enough to crack into my top 10. Another one is Yes, God, Yes, with Natalie Dyer, I believe is her name, from Stranger Things. I thought that was a really fun coming-of-age film that I don't think a lot of people checked out because I didn't see a lot of people kind of posting and talking about that one. Let's talk about Another Round. That was one that I felt like I needed to watch before making this list because a lot of people were hyping that movie up, and I thought it was really good. I like the themes and the stuff that it tried to say within the film. Definitely hit me on a little bit of a personal level, and it's a theme that I might be incorporating in an upcoming video. I don't know, we'll see. So without further ado, guys, let's crack into my top 10 best films of 2020. Coming in at number 10, guys, is The King of Staten Island. I'm a huge Judd Apatow fan. A 40-Year-Old Virgin is probably my favorite comedy of all time. Knocked Up is up there as well. I'm a big fan of most of his work, but Pete Davidson in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. And another film that I'll call out is Big Time Adolescence. I thought he did a great job in that movie as well. That one certainly didn't reach the highs that The King of Staten Island did. But yeah, I love King of Staten Island. Bill Burr's in it, Marissa Tomei. It's a great cast. It's a great kind of comedy, drama type movie. The style that Judd Apatow is so good at doing. And I actually have a review for this film on my YouTube, as well as a Judd Apatow ranking if you guys want to go back at my reviews playlist and check that out. But yeah, The King of Staten Island, definitely one of my favorite films of 2020, so that is coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, guys, is a film that maybe I don't feel like a lot of people were really talking about as much as they should. There were a few that were hyping this movie up, but Becky, starring Lulu Wilson and Kevin James, is absolutely fantastic. I love the movie. I love the directions that it went, the twists and turns. I love some of the stuff, in particular in the final act with her and how she handled some of these villains and stuff like that. I thought Kevin James was so freaking good as this menacing character. Comedians taking that more dark and sinister role is something that's happening a little bit more lately. You saw it with Vince Vaughn recently in Freaky, but I think he pulled it off very well. I thought he was a fantastic villain in this movie. And Becky herself, played by Lulu Wilson, is freaking phenomenal. She's badass in this role, like 13, 14-year-old girl. It's kind of a little bit like Home Alone, a little bit home invasion style, but I really enjoyed Becky quite a bit, and that was one of my favorites of 2020, one that kind of stayed in my mind for the duration of the year. So Becky at number 9 feels like a good spot. Coming in at number 8, guys, is a movie that I know a lot of people will kind of hear and they'll be like, boring. Just the name alone sounds boring, and it's an A24 film. It is the only A24 film that I saw in 2020. There wasn't a whole lot of them that came out. There were movies like Saint Maud that came out, but I haven't seen it. I think that's coming out on VOD in a couple of weeks. But First Cow was the only A24 film that I saw in 2020, and I really enjoyed this film. I don't know what you want me to say. I did a Blu-ray, I did a movie review of this one as well on the channel that you guys can check out, but I was completely captivated and engaged by this story and these characters, and I thought they had a fantastic relationship together. And I just thought it was a really fun story. It's really like a heist movie. It's like a milk heist movie. You know, it is a little slower paced. It is a little slow moving, but to me, it didn't drag. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being back in this kind of period piece setting. And yeah, First Cow, definitely one of my favorites of 2020. Coming in at number 7, guys, is a movie that I just watched this week as well. And I didn't expect to love this movie as much as I did, but Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, a Netflix original film, and there's actually going to be quite a few Netflix original films on this list, but Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, absolutely fantastic. And I had no idea that this was done based off a play by August Wilson, which another movie that was based off a play by August Wilson is Fences, that came out back in 2016 with Denzel Washington and Viola Davis as well. I think Viola Davis won the Academy Award for that film, and Denzel should have as well, because that movie was fantastic, fantastic performances. Now, the one criticism that people like to give both of these movies is that they feel more like stage plays on film than actual like cinematic experiences. And I get that. I understand that. But I talked about this film in my Blu-ray hunt this week, and I really enjoy that style. It's not something I want to see all the time, but it allows me, when I'm not thinking about the impressive cinematography and just the film aspect of it, it allowed me to really just absorb and engage with these characters in a way that you just don't in normal films. And you just really get into the dialogue and get into these characters and get into these performances, because that's what this movie is. It is two fantastic performances by Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, and Viola Davis. And they're both just so freaking good in this movie. My only criticism of the movie itself was the fact that they didn't interact as much as I think I would have liked them to. But that's part of the charm of the movie as well, because it's just really going back between these two characters throughout the film. It takes place all throughout a day, which is something I also love. I love when movies do that and they just tell a really contained story, like a day in the life of. And yeah, I really enjoy Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. That is my number 7. So coming in at number 6, guys, we have a movie that a lot of people were hyping up all year as one of the year's best. And I didn't think it didn't quite reach my expectations when I saw it in the theaters, but I watched it again at home. I got it on 4K. The movie, kind of horror sci-fi thriller movie, I would call it, directed by Leigh Whannell, starring Elizabeth Moss, and that is The Invisible Man. So this is a really effective horror thriller turned sci-fi film, and Leigh Whannell does such a good job at directing these kind of horror action sci-fi films that kind of have shades of RoboCop and like films of the 80s in my opinion, but he adds this own like unique style and flair to it. Upgrade is like one of my favorite movies of the past decade. To me, Upgrade is slightly a better film than Invisible Man, but I really enjoyed Invisible Man quite a bit just for the style and the performances and just the twists and turns that it takes. Of course, the one big twist I kind of saw coming, but there's something that happens right in the middle of this movie that's just freaking blew my mind. And yeah, Invisible Man is great. Is it the best movie of 2020? No, but it is one that I really enjoyed and definitely a highlight and a standout of this year. Coming in at number 5, guys, is a movie that I wasn't quite sure if I was really going to enjoy, even while I was watching it. But by the time we got to the end, everything just kind of came together, and I really just enjoyed the way this story was told and the brutal nature of it, and just all the performances were fantastic. I know some people had some problems with this movie, but The Devil All the Time with Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson, such a great cast in this movie. Everybody was super effective in their roles, and Tom Holland, if you don't believe this guy has a darker edge to his personality and to his ability as an actor, then watch this movie, because he is freaking spectacular in this film, and I will buy into every single role that Tom Holland takes from this point on because of this movie. He is not just Spider-Man. He's not just Peter Parker. He is capable of so much more, and it shows in this film, and I really enjoyed The Devil All the Time enough for it to crack my top 5 of 2020. Coming in at number 4, guys, is another one that's might be a little controversial for people. I know people, this is another one that you can call me boring or old or whatever, and I just like boring old movies, but Mank was a movie that I definitely wasn't expecting to love as much as I did, but this might be, outside of like Air Force One, my favorite Gary Oldman performance. I thought he was completely fantastic in this movie, and I think it helped that I also watched Citizen Kane for the first time in 2020 as well. So I had that kind of fresh in my mind, and I thought that movie was a masterpiece, a perfect 10 out of 10. So getting to see just the process for how this movie was wrote, and just the whole thing with the old like period piece, like this movie felt like an old Hollywood movie, but it also felt like modern in a sense, and David Fincher just did such a good job balancing all of these tones in this film and kind of giving you this snapshot look into this very specific time period, very specific story. It wasn't just about the making of Mank, but it was about everything that went into the writing process of it. And I appreciate showing that aspect of it versus like just being on the set showing how it was made and filmed and stuff. So getting to highlight this writer that really doesn't get the credit that he deserves in comparison to Orson Welles, because that's who I thought wrote the film before I saw this. I didn't know the story of Mank, and now I do. So I just thought this was very impressive just from a direction, cinematography, performance standpoint. The subject matter was incredibly interesting to me because like I said, I just watched Citizen Kane, so I was really into the story and stuff that it was telling this film. And yeah, just all the performances are fantastic. I love Mank, and that comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3, guys, is a movie that I really still don't know how I feel about this film and how I'm going to feel about it in a year, in 2 years, because I just watched it a couple of weeks ago, but I gotta give it points for just affecting me as deeply, personally, and emotionally as it did in those first 25 minutes, and that is Pieces of a Woman. It is so raw and visceral and real that I almost felt like I was gonna throw up in those first 25 minutes. It is this big, long, one-take scene of the birth, and just knowing what was gonna happen was like one of the most tense moments that I've had watching a movie in maybe like 10 years. It was more than, it scared me more than every horror movie I've ever seen in my life. I almost had to turn this movie off, and it's not because it was bad. And the thing is that even though it made me feel this way, I never at one point thought this movie was being emotionally manipulative. I thought that everything that it was saying, that it had purpose, it had meaning. Shia LaBeouf is in this movie. Vanessa Kirby, in my opinion, should be Best Actress. Like, she's the best performance that I've seen all year in film, and yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. Shia LaBeouf's fantastic. The only criticism I can give this film, and I love the entire movie, it's beautifully made. The direction and cinematography, the greatness of that doesn't just stop after the first 20 minutes. It goes on throughout the entire film, and I just enjoyed almost every aspect of this film, except for the fact that they don't really wrap up a certain character in this movie. I don't want to spoil anything as tightly as they do others, and it kind of left me with a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But Pieces of a Woman, for affecting me on this level, the fact that most movies nowadays don't ever reach the heights that this movie does as far as like just emotionally effective material. I gotta put it in my top 3 just because of that. So Pieces of a Woman, number 3 on my list. Coming in at number 2, guys, is a movie that honestly almost made number 1. And this, after I saw it, I'm like, that's my favorite film of 2020, and that is Soul. Soul is one of the best Pixar movies I've ever seen, and it's definitely one of the best children's animated films that I've ever seen. And the only criticism I can give this one is that it's maybe not for kids as much as it is for adults, at least as far as the themes and the messages. I think that kids can definitely get the themes, but I think it hits adults so much more because they're right in the middle of what this movie is trying to explain and trying to convey, and the message that it's trying to give everybody. And I really enjoyed the message. It hit me hard. The way this movie ends, tears to my eyes. And Pixar, again, they have this way about them and how they tell their stories and stuff. And I just really emotionally connected to this movie in a way that I don't think I've emotionally connected to a Pixar film since Inside Out. So for that, this movie is number 2 on my list. One of the best Pixar films, one of the best films of 2020 is Soul, coming in at number 2. Coming in at number 1, guys, look, this came out all the way back in January, and this is gonna be an awkward pick for some people, and like I said, Soul almost made my number 1, but when I really stopped to think about it, am I gonna rewatch Soul all the time? Am I gonna rewatch Pieces of a Woman? Am I gonna rewatch Mank over and over again and get the same level of enjoyment that I did out of this number 1 pick? No, I don't think that I'm going to. And for me, like, it's not completely about rewatchability, but at the end of the day, it is about what movie was I the most entertained by? What is my favorite movie of 2020? And the one that just not only met my expectations, every expectation, but just exceeded it in a way that I never could have imagined or expected. And the movie that did that to me this year was Bad Boys for Life. That is right, Bad Boys for Life is my number 1 film of 2020. You can call me crazy. You can call me whatever you want. You can say I don't know film. It is a basic pick, but it is a movie that I loved. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence have such great chemistry in these films. And the fact that they brought all of that back like 20 years after Bad Boys 2, like at least 17 years, was just freaking phenomenal. This movie is funny. It is action-packed. It is emotional. I got surprisingly emotional. I teared up a couple of scenes in this movie. There are some story issues, some twists and turns that happen in the third act that I didn't completely get on board with, but I love the journey of these two people at the later stages of their life. And yeah, I'm a huge Bad Boys fan. I used to watch that. That was one of my favorite action movies growing up. I probably watched the first one at least 50 times. Not so much Bad Boys 2, but the first Bad Boys I loved. And to me, they took everything that these two characters had in the first film, and they brought it forward 25 years and just delivered an experience that I didn't think that they were capable of giving. And Martin Lawrence, man, he's got to do more stuff. He's got to come back, because I miss this guy so freaking much. And he's so good in this movie, and they've talked about doing a fourth one. And to be honest, with a movie this good, I am completely on board with a Bad Boys 4. Only I think they missed an opportunity here with wasting the Bad Boys for Life on the third one, but we'll get into that at another time. So that is, guys, my top 10 movies of 2020. I hope you enjoyed this list. Like I said, this is my top 10 movies of 2020. Be respectful in the comments and leave your top 10 as well. You know, I'm not saying you have to agree with me. That has to be your top 10, but these are my top 10 movies. These are the movies that I saw in 2020 that I thought were worthy enough to be in my top 10. And like I said, this was a weird year. There was a lot of VOD moving parts. There's still quite a few movies that I haven't seen, ones that got early screened and are still coming out in the coming weeks that are be considered 2020 movies. So, but I just wanted to go ahead and get this top 10 list out of the way. I will be back next week to discuss the top 10 worst films of 2020, which should be a pretty fun list. So like always, guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Comment down below your favorite films of 2020. Be sure to like this video, turn on all bell notifications for future videos, and we'll see you next time.